My name is Alvaretta Pierce, and I'm 78 years old. For the past 10 years, my family has treated me like I'm invisible, like I'm just a weak old woman waiting to die so they can take everything I've spent my life building. They thought I was too old to fight back, too tired to care, too confused to understand what they were doing. They were wrong. And on a cold November morning, in the office of my family lawyer, they found out just how wrong they were. I sat at the head of the long conference table in Attorney Homer Banks' office, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I wore my best outfit, a deep violet suit with lavender pearls. My silver hair was styled perfectly. I looked every bit the powerful woman I'd always been. Around the table sat my family, all of them staring at me with confused, angry faces. My daughter, Florida, 52 years old, sat to my right. Her face was red with fury. My son, Burl, 48 years old, sat to my left. His hands were clenched into fists on the table. My granddaughter, Winnie, 25 years old, stood near the window. She looked shocked and scared. And my grandson, Arch, 28 years old, paced back and forth behind his chair, looking like he wanted to explode. "This is insane," Florida screamed, slamming her hands on the table. "Mother, you can't do this." "I already did," I said calmly. "You're making a huge mistake," Burl shouted. "You're old. You don't understand what you're doing. They probably tricked you into signing those papers." I smiled, not a warm smile, a cold, powerful smile. "Nobody tricked me, Burl," I said. "I know exactly what I did, and it's already done." Attorney Homer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Pierce has made her decision. As of this morning, she has taken full legal control of the entire Pierce estate. All properties, all bank accounts, all investments, everything." "But she PROMISED us," Winnie cried out. "Grandma, you said we'd inherit everything when you died. You said we'd be taken care of." "I said I'd take care of you," I corrected her. "I never said I'd let you steal from me while I'm still alive." "Steal?" Arch stopped packing and glared at me. "We're not stealing, we're family. That money belongs to all of us." "No," I said firmly, standing up from my chair. Even at 78, I stood tall and strong. "That money belongs to me. I earned it. I built this family's wealth, and I decide what happens to it." "You're out of your mind," Florida screamed. "We're taking you to court. We're going to prove you're not mentally fit to make these decisions." "Try it," I said calmly. "Attorney Homer has documentation from 3 different doctors confirming that I'm perfectly healthy and of sound mind. You'll lose." The room erupted in chaos, everyone shouting at once. Florida crying, Burl cursing, Winnie begging, Arch threatening. But I stood there, calm and unmoved. Because this wasn't a sudden decision. This wasn't anger or confusion or old age making me do crazy things. This was justice. This was me taking back control of my life and my legacy from a family that had spent 10 years treating me like I was already dead. "How could you do this to us?" Florida sobbed. "After everything we've done for you." I looked at her with cold eyes. "After everything you've done for me, or to me." Florida's mouth snapped shut. "That's what I thought," I said. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. Attorney Homer stood to escort me out. "Wait," Burl jumped up. "Mother, please, we can talk about this. Don't leave like this." I stopped at the door and turned back to look at my family. At the people I'd loved and cared for my entire life. The people who'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. "For 10 years, you've all been waiting for me to die," I said quietly. "You've been planning what you do with my money, fighting over who gets what, treating me like I'm already gone." "That's not true," Winnie protested weakly. "Don't lie," I said sharply. "I heard you, all of you. I know exactly what you've been doing, and now you're going to learn a very important lesson." "What lesson?" Arch asked bitterly. I smiled that cold smile again. "Old doesn't mean weak, and this old woman just took control of everything you thought was yours." And with that, I walked out of the office, leaving my family screaming behind me. But to understand how we got to that moment, I need to take you back to where it all began. In 2015, I was 68 years old and my husband, Early Pierce, had just died. Early and I had been married for 45 years. We built everything together: a successful construction company, rental properties all over the city, investments and savings. We were worth millions. Early had always handled the business side of things, but I wasn't just a passive wife. I worked alongside him, made decisions, helped build our empire. We were partners in every sense. When Early died of a heart attack, I was devastated. We'd planned to retire together, travel the world, enjoy our golden years. Instead, I was alone. My children, Florida and Burl, came to the funeral. They hugged me and cried and said all the right things. "We're here for you, Mom," Florida said. "Whatever you need, we'll help you," Burl promised. I believed them. They were my children. Of course they'd support me during this difficult time. After the funeral, we all gathered at my house, the big, beautiful house Early and I had built 30 years ago. Florida, Burl, and their families sat in the living room. "Mom, we need to talk about Dad's estate," Burl said gently. "It's too soon," I said. "Your father just died. Can't we wait a few weeks?" "We understand you're grieving," Florida said, taking my hand. "But there are important decisions to make. The company, the properties, the accounts. Someone needs to manage all of that." "I can manage it," I said. "Your father and I built that company together. I know how it works." Florida and Burl exchanged a look I didn't understand at the time, but would come to know very well. "Mom, you're almost 70, Burl said carefully. "Running a multi-million-dollar business is stressful. You should be relaxing, enjoying your retirement." "I don't want to retire," I said. "The business is my life's work too." "But you're getting older," Florida added. "It's a lot of responsibility. Why don't you let Burl and me help? We can take over the day-to-day operations. You can still be involved, but without all the stress." It sounded reasonable at the time. I was grieving. I was tired. And they were my children. I trusted them. "Okay," I said, "but I'm still in charge. You're just helping." "Of course," Burl said, smiling. "You're still in charge, Mom." That was the first lie. Over the next few months, Florida and Burl slowly took over every aspect of the business. At first, it was small things. "Mom, why don't you sign this paper?" "It's just routine business stuff," Burl would say. "Mom, we need your signature on these bank documents. It's just updating the accounts after Dad's death," Florida would explain. I signed everything they put in front of me. I trusted them. But then things started changing. I'd go to the company office, and people would look at me strangely. "Mrs. Pierce, what are you doing here?" the receptionist asked one day. "What do you mean? I own this company," I said, confused. "Well, yes, but..." "Mr. Burl said you were retired now. He said he and Ms. Florida were running things." My stomach dropped. I never said I was retired. I went to find Burl. He was in what used to be Early's office, my office now, or so I thought. "Burl, what's going on? Why are people saying I'm retired?" Burl looked uncomfortable. "Mom, sit down, let's talk." "I don't want to sit down. I want to know why you're telling people I'm retired when I never said that." "Mom, you're almost 70 years old," Burl said. "People expect someone your age to be retired. It's just easier if we tell them Florida and I are in charge now." "But I am in charge," I insisted. "Of course," Burl said quickly. "You're still the owner, we're just managing things for you." But that wasn't true. Over the next year, I watched as my children systematically took control of everything. They moved me out of the office, saying I'd be more comfortable working from home. They stopped inviting me to business meetings, saying they were too boring and too stressful for me. They started making major decisions without consulting me, saying they didn't want to bother me with every little detail. And slowly, gradually, I became invisible in my own company. What made it worse was how my family started treating me at home. Every Sunday, the whole family would come to my house for dinner, a tradition Early and I had started decades ago. Florida and Burl would come with their families. My grandchildren, Winnie and Arch, would be there too. At first, these dinners were nice, a way to stay connected as a family. But then I started noticing something disturbing. They'd talk about the business right in front of me, like I wasn't even there. "We need to sell the Oak Street property," Burl would say. "Good idea," Florida would agree. "We can get at least $2 million for it." "Excuse me," I'd interrupt. "I don't want to sell Oak Street. That was the first property Early and I ever bought." They'd look at me like I was a confused child. "Mom, it's not a good investment anymore," Burl would explain slowly, like I was stupid. "The neighborhood is changing. We need to sell before the value drops." "But I don't want to sell it," I'd insist. "We'll think about it, Mom," Florida would say dismissively. Then they'd go right back to talking about it like I'd never spoken. And 2 weeks later, I'd find out they'd sold it anyway. This happened over and over again. They'd make decisions about MY business, MY properties, MY money, and I had no say in any of it. When I'd complain, they'd pat my hand and say things like, "Don't worry about it, Mom. We're taking care of everything." "You're getting confused. We already discussed this." "You're too stressed. Let us handle the business stuff." I started to feel like I was going crazy. Was I confused? Was my memory failing? Was I really incapable of running my own business anymore? The breaking point came on my 75th birthday, 3 years ago. The family threw me a big party at my house. Everyone was there: children, grandchildren, extended family, friends. It should have been a happy celebration. But that night, I overheard something that changed everything. I'd gone upstairs to get my sweater because I was cold. As I walked past the guest bedroom, I heard voices inside. The door was slightly open. I recognized Florida's voice immediately. "Can't wait much longer," she was saying. "She's 75. How much longer can she possibly live?" "Could be years," Burl's voice responded. "Mom's healthy. She might live to 90. "That's 15 more years." Florida sounded frustrated. "I'll be almost 70 by then. I want to enjoy this money while I'm still young enough." I know," Burl said. "But what can we do? We can't exactly speed things up." They both laughed at that, actually laughed. My hand flew to my mouth to stop myself from gasping. "At least we've got control of everything now," Florida said. "When she finally dies, it'll be easy to divide it all up. We've already got our names on most of the accounts." "What about the house?" That was Arch's voice. "Grandma said she's leaving the house to all of us to share." "We're not sharing anything," Burl said firmly. "Your mom and I built this business. You kids will get something, but the majority goes to us." "That's not fair," Winnie's voice joined in. "Grandma has millions. There's plenty for everyone." "Life's not fair, sweetie," Florida said. "Besides, your grandmother doesn't know what she's doing anymore. She's old and confused. We're the ones actually running the business now. We deserve the lion's share." "But she thinks we love her," Winnie said quietly. "She thinks we're taking care of her because we care." There was a pause. Then Florida said something that broke my heart. "Of course we care. We care about our inheritance. Now come on, we need to go back downstairs before someone notices we're missing." I heard them moving toward the door. I quickly walked down the hallway and slipped into the bathroom, my heart pounding. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, my hands shaking, tears streaming down my face. My children didn't love me. They were just waiting for me to die. They thought I was old and confused and weak. They'd taken control of my entire life's work, and they were planning to take everything the moment I was gone. I cried in that bathroom for 20 minutes. Then I washed my face, fixed my makeup, and went back downstairs to my own birthday party. I smiled and laughed and acted like everything was fine. But inside, something had changed. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I was going to take back control. The Monday after my birthday, I did something I'd never done before. I went to see a lawyer, not the family lawyer that Early had always used, but a new lawyer, someone my family didn't know. His name was Homer Banks, and he specialized in estate planning and elder law. "Mrs. Pierce, how can I help you?" he asked after I sat down in his office. I need to take back control of my life, I said, and I need to do it secretly. I told him everything, about how my children had slowly pushed me out of my own business, about how they'd taken control of my properties and accounts, about how they were just waiting for me to die so they could inherit everything. Homer listened carefully, taking notes. Mrs. Pierce, do you have copies of any documents you signed over the past few years? He asked. Some, I said, but not all. My children handled most of the paperwork. That's what I was afraid of, Homer said. Mrs. Pierce, based on what you've told me, it sounds like your children may have committed financial elder abuse. They've isolated you from your own assets and are controlling your finances without your full knowledge or consent. Can we fix it? I asked. Yes, Homer said, but it's going to take time. We need to carefully review every document, every transfer, every change they've made. Then we need to legally reverse it all and put you back in full control. How long will that take? Could be months, could be a few years, Homer said honestly. And we have to be very careful. If your family finds out what you're doing before we're ready, they might try to stop us. They might even try to have you declared mentally incompetent. Then what should I do? I asked. Homer leaned forward. You play along. You act like the sweet, confused old lady they think you are. You don't let them know you're onto them. And while they think they're in control, you and I work behind the scenes to take back everything they've stolen. I thought about it. Could I really pretend for months or even years? Could I sit at Sunday dinners and smile at my children while knowing they were betraying me? Then I remembered Florida's words. She's old and confused. She doesn't know what she's doing anymore. Let's do it, I said firmly. And that's exactly what we did. For the next 3 years, I played the role of the confused, helpless old woman. I let my children make decisions without arguing. I smiled and nodded when they explained things to me like I was a child. I acted grateful for their help. But behind the scenes, Homer and I were working. We discovered that Florida and Burl had put their names on almost every bank account. They'd transferred ownership of several properties to themselves. They'd even changed the business structure so that they were listed as co-owners instead of just managers. All of this had been done using documents I'd signed, documents they'd told me were routine, or just updating things after Dad's death. I'd been so trusting, so naive. But we found something they didn't know about, something Early had set up years ago that they'd never discovered. A secret trust. Early had created it as a backup plan, in case anything ever happened to our main assets. The trust contained several properties and investments worth about $4 million. Only Early, me, and the original family lawyer knew about it. And since I'd never told Florida or Burl about it, they had no idea it existed. This is perfect, Homer said when we discovered it. This gives you independent resources. We can use this as leverage. We also got doctors' evaluations proving I was mentally sharp and capable of managing my own affairs. We gathered evidence of every unauthorized transaction Florida and Burl had made. We built a legal case that was absolutely airtight. And finally, 3 years after that terrible birthday party, we were ready. Homer filed legal documents taking back full control of everything. We reversed all the unauthorized transfers. We removed Florida and Burl's names from all accounts. We restructured the business to put me back as sole owner. And we did it all in one day, before my family even knew what was happening. That's when Homer called the family meeting. Your mother has asked me to call this meeting, Homer told my family when they all arrived at his office that morning. They'd been confused by the summons but had come anyway, probably expecting more paperwork to sign. What's this about? Burl asked, looking at me suspiciously. I didn't answer, I just smiled. Homer opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. As of this morning, Homer announced, Alvaretta Pierce has taken full legal control of the entire Pierce estate. All properties, bank accounts, business assets, and investments are now solely in her name. All previous transfers and co-ownership arrangements have been reversed. The room went completely silent. Florida's mouth fell open. Burl's face went pale. Winnie and Arch looked at each other in shock. "What?" Florida finally whispered. "That's impossible," Burl said. "Mom doesn't, she can't." "Can't what?" I asked sweetly. "Can't manage my own affairs, can't make my own decisions, can't understand what I'm doing." Burl's face flushed red. "Mom, I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You've meant it for 10 years, you all have." That's when the screaming started. That's when Florida slammed the table and Burl shouted accusations, and Winnie cried and Arch threatened. That's when I stood up and told them exactly what I thought of them. And that's when I walked out, leaving them to deal with the reality that the weak old woman they'd been manipulating had just taken everything back. Wow, Alvaretta just took back everything. But what will her family do now? How will they react? And what other secrets are about to come out? If you're hooked on this story, you need to subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button and turn on the notification. Also, drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think Alvaretta did the right thing? What would you do in her situation? Where are you watching from? United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Jamaica, Kenya, South Africa, Australia? Let me know. I didn't go straight home after leaving Attorney Homer's office. Instead, I went to my favorite cafe, Lavender Rose, a small coffee shop downtown where nobody knew me or my family drama. I ordered a cup of tea and a slice of lemon cake and sat by the window watching people walk by. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I'd done it. After 3 years of pretending, of playing weak, of letting them think they'd won, I'd taken everything back. My phone started buzzing in my purse. I pulled it out and saw dozens of missed calls and text messages, all from my family. "Florida, Mother, call me right now. We need to talk about this insanity." "Burl, what you did today is illegal. We're getting our own lawyer. You can't just steal everything from us." "Winnie, Grandma, please, can we just talk? I don't understand what's happening." "Arch, you're going to regret this." I read each message carefully, then turned off my phone and put it back in my purse. They could wait. For 10 years, they'd made me wait for everything. Wait for information about my own business. Wait for permission to spend my own money. Wait to be included in decisions about my own life. Now it was their turn to wait. An hour later, I drove home to my house, the big, beautiful house Early and I had built. The house my children had already been planning to sell the moment I died. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Florida's car parked on the street. She was sitting on my front porch, waiting. My stomach tightened. But I kept my face calm as I got out of the car. "Mother," Florida jumped up and rushed toward me. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you, Florida," I said, walking past her toward my front door. "You can't just shut us out like this." Florida followed me. "That business belongs to all of us. Dad would have wanted." I spun around so fast that Florida stumbled backward. "Don't you dare tell me what your father would have wanted," I said, my voice cold and sharp. "Early and I built that business together, not for you, not for Burl, for US. But you promised we'd inherit." "I promised you'd be taken care of," I corrected. "I never promised you could steal from me while I'm still alive." "We didn't steal anything," Florida's voice rose. "We've been managing things for you because you were too old to do it yourself." "I was never too old," I said quietly. "You just convinced me I was." Florida's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked genuinely hurt. "Mom, that's not true. We were trying to help you." "No, Florida, you were helping yourselves." I turned and unlocked my front door. Florida tried to follow me inside, but I blocked her. "This is MY house," I said firmly, "and you're not welcome here right now." "You're kicking me out," Florida looked shocked. "I'm your daughter." "Then act like one," I said. "Stop treating me like I'm already dead." I closed the door in her face and locked it. Through the window, I watched Florida stand there for a moment, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. Then she stormed back to her car and drove away. I leaned against the door and took a deep breath. This was just the beginning. That evening, the phone calls started. My regular phone, the one my family could reach me on, rang constantly. I let it go to voicemail. Burrell's message: "Mom, this is ridiculous. You're making a huge mistake. We're trying to protect you, and this is how you repay us. Call me back so we can fix this before you embarrass yourself any further." Florida's message: "Mother, I'm worried about you. Are you feeling okay? Did someone convince you to do this? That lawyer probably manipulated you. Old people get taken advantage of all the time. Please call me so we can talk about this rationally." Arch's message: "Grandma, this is messed up. You're destroying the family over money. Is that what you want? To die alone because you're being greedy?" Winnie's message: "Grandma, I love you. I just want to understand what's happening. Did we do something wrong? Please talk to us." Each message made me feel a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, guilt, and determination. Winnie's message was the hardest. She sounded genuinely confused and hurt, but I'd heard her that night 3 years ago, talking with the others about my inheritance. She wasn't innocent in all this. I made myself a simple dinner and ate alone at the kitchen table. This house had always been full of family: Sunday dinners, birthday parties, holiday celebrations. Now it felt empty and quiet. But it was MY house, my space, MY peace. And for the first time in 10 years, nobody was here telling me what to do or how to feel or what to think. Thursday morning, I woke up early and did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the office. Not to ask permission, not to visit, but to work. I walked into Pierce Construction Company at 8 o'clock sharp, wearing my violet suit and carrying my briefcase. The receptionist, Melvina, looked up and her eyes went wide. "Mrs. Pierce, we weren't expecting you." "This is my company," I said pleasantly. "I don't need to make appointments." I walked past her desk toward the executive offices. Burrell's office, the one that used to be Early's, the one that should have been mine. Burrell was already there, sitting behind the big mahogany desk, talking on the phone. When he saw me, his face went dark red. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone and hung up. "Mother, what are you doing here?" "Working," I said simply. I set my briefcase on his desk. "Pack up your things, this is my office now." "You can't be serious." "Dead serious," I said. "As of yesterday, I'm back in full control of this company. That means you report to me now, not the other way around." Burrell stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "This is insane. You haven't worked here in years. You don't know how anything operates anymore." "Then you'll teach me," I said calmly. "Or you can quit, your choice." "Quit," Burrell laughed bitterly, "and lose everything we've built." "Everything you've built?" I raised an eyebrow. "Burrell, you've worked here for 15 years. Your father and I built this company over 40 years before you even joined. Don't confuse management with ownership." "I've expanded this business," Burrell said angrily. "The company is worth 3 times what it was when Dad died. That was MY work." "Using MY resources," I pointed out. "My money, MY properties, my investments. You did good work, Burrell. I'm not denying that. But you did it with assets that belonged to me while slowly pushing me out and waiting for me to die." Burrell's face went pale. We weren't." "Don't lie to me," I said quietly. "I heard you 3 years ago at my birthday party. I heard all of you talking about how you couldn't wait for me to die so you could divide up my money." Burrell's mouth opened and closed. You heard that?" "Every word." He sat down slowly, the anger draining from his face. "Mom, that wasn't. We were just frustrated. We didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "And that's why things are changing. Now, are you going to work with me, or do I need to find a new operations manager?" Burrell stared at me for a long moment. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out his best move. "Fine," he finally said. "I'll work with you. But this is a mistake, Mom. You're going to run this company into the ground." "Then I guess we'll find out," I said. "Now move, I want my office back." An hour later, I called a meeting of all the senior staff, 15 people who'd been running the day-to-day operations of Pierce Construction. They filed into the conference room, looking confused and nervous. They'd heard rumors about what happened yesterday, but nobody knew the full story. I stood at the head of the table, Burrell sitting in the corner with his arms crossed and a scowl on his face. "Good morning, everyone," I began. "For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alvaretta Pierce. I founded this company 43 years ago with my late husband, Early Pierce." Several people nodded. The older employees remembered me. The younger ones just looked confused. "For the past 10 years, I've been absent from daily operations," I continued. "My children, Florida and Burrell, have been managing things, but as of yesterday, that's changed. I'm back in full control." Whispers rippled through the room. "Now I want to be clear," I said. "This is not about revenge. This is not about family drama. This is about proper management and accountability. I'm going to be reviewing every aspect of this business, every contract, every expense, every decision made over the past 10 years. More whispers. Burrell shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "If you've been doing your job well, you have nothing to worry about," I assured them. "But if I find mismanagement, waste, or fraud, there will be consequences. Does anyone have any questions?" Shade, the head of operations, raised his hand. "Mrs. Pierce, with all due respect, are you qualified to run this company? Construction has changed a lot in 10 years. "That's a fair question," I acknowledged. "And you're right, I have a lot to learn about modern construction practices. That's why I'm not firing everyone and starting over. I'm going to work with you, learn from you, but make no mistake, I'm the owner and final decisions go through me." Shade nodded slowly, seeming satisfied. "Anyone else?" I asked. Green, the CFO, raised his hand. "What about Mr. Burrell and Ms. Florida? What are their roles now?" "Burrell remains as operations manager, reporting directly to me," I said. "Florida will continue managing the rental properties, also reporting to me. They're still part of this company. They're just no longer in complete control." I looked around the room, at all the faces staring back at me. "I know this is a lot of change," I said. "And I know some of you might think I'm just a confused old woman making impulsive decisions. But I promise you, I know exactly what I'm doing. Give me a chance to prove it." There was a long silence. Then Royal, one of the senior project managers, started clapping. Slowly, others joined in. Not everyone clapped. Burrell certainly didn't, but enough people did that I felt encouraged. Maybe this would work after all. That afternoon, I sat in my office, MY office, going through files with Green, the CFO. "Mrs. Pierce, I need to show you something," Green said nervously. "Something I probably should have brought to your attention years ago." "What is it?" I asked. He pulled out a folder and opened it. Inside were financial statements from the past 5 years. "Your children have been taking money from the company," Green said quietly. "Not technically stealing, they listed it as management bonuses and consulting fees. But the amounts are substantial." I looked at the numbers. My eyes widened. Over the past 5 years, Florida and Burrell had paid themselves over $3 million in bonuses and fees. "$3 million, I whispered. "Yes, ma'am," Green said. "They approved these payments themselves, without board oversight, because they'd restructured the company to give themselves that authority." I felt sick. $3 million. My children had taken $3 million that should have gone back into the business or into savings. "Why didn't you say something?" I asked. Green looked ashamed. "I tried, Mrs. Pierce. I sent emails questioning the amounts, but Mr. Burrell said you'd approved everything. He said you were retired and happy to let them run things. I'm sorry, I should have pushed harder." "It's not your fault," I said, though anger burned in my chest. "They lied to you. They lied to everyone." I spent the next 3 hours going through every financial record Green had. The more I saw, the angrier I became. My children hadn't just taken $3 million in bonuses. They'd also sold 5 rental properties and kept the profits instead of reinvesting them. Approved expensive business trips that were actually family vacations. Given themselves company, credit cards with no spending limits. hired their friends and family members at inflated salaries. They'd been treating my company like their personal piggy bank for years. That evening, I drove to Florida's house. She lived in a beautiful mansion in the wealthy part of town, a mansion she'd bought 3 years ago, supposedly with her savings. Now I knew where those savings came from. I rang the doorbell. Florida's husband, Homer, answered. "Alvaretta," he said uncomfortably, "this isn't a good time." "I don't care," I said. "I need to talk to Florida now." Florida appeared behind him, her face hard. "Mother, unless you're here to apologize for the chaos you've caused, I don't want to hear it." "Apologize?" I laughed without humor. "Florida, I know about the money." Her face went pale. "What money?" "The $3 million you and Burl have paid yourselves over the past 5 years. The rental properties you sold and pocketed. The credit cards, the fake business trips, all of it." Florida's mouth opened and closed. That was legitimate compensation for our work. $3 million, I said. "For managing a company that was already successful. Florida, your father and I never paid ourselves a fraction of that, and we built the company from nothing." "Times have changed," Florida argued. "Executive compensation is different now. We were entitled to." "You were entitled to a salary," I interrupted. "Not to raid the company like it was your personal bank account." "We were managing your wealth," Florida shouted. "Someone had to do it." "I could have done it," I shouted back. "I WANTED to do it, but you pushed me out. You made me think I was too old, too confused, too incompetent. And while I sat at home thinking I was losing my mind. You and Burl were stealing millions." "We didn't steal anything," Florida's voice cracked. "That money was going to be ours anyway when you died." "But I'm not dead," I screamed. The words echoed in the hallway. Florida stared at me, tears streaming down her face. "That's the problem, isn't it?" I said quietly. "I'm not dead, I'm still here, and I ruined your plans by refusing to die on your schedule." "That's not fair," Florida whispered. "None of this is fair," I said. "But it's the truth. You and Burl spent 10 years waiting for me to die, and now that I've taken back control, you're acting like I'm the villain." "What do you want from us?" Florida asked, her voice breaking. "I want my children back," I said sadly. "I want the Florida and Burl who used to love me for who I was, not for what I could give them. But I don't think those people exist anymore." I turned and walked back to my car. Florida called after me, but I didn't stop. Friday morning, Attorney Homer called me with news I'd been expecting. "Alvaretta, your children have filed a lawsuit," he said. "They're claiming you're mentally incompetent and that you were coerced into signing documents you didn't understand." "Can they win?" I asked. "Not a chance," Homer said confidently. "We have documentation from 3 different doctors confirming you're mentally sharp. We have evidence of their financial misconduct. We have recordings of conversations where they admitted to waiting for you to die. They don't have a case." "Then why are they doing it?" I asked. "Because they're desperate," Homer said. "They've lost control, and they're trying anything to get it back. But Alvaretta, this is going to get ugly. They're going to try to drag your name through the mud. They're going to make you look bad in court and in public." "Let them try," I said firmly. "I have the truth on my side." "Good," Homer said, "because we go to court in 3 weeks. And when we're done, everyone is going to know exactly what your children have been doing." That afternoon, I got a call from Winnie, my granddaughter. "Grandma," she said, crying, "please stop this. Please just give Mom and Uncle Burl what they want. The lawsuit is tearing the family apart." "The family was torn apart 10 years ago," I said gently, "when they decided money was more important than me." "But you're hurting everyone," Winnie sobbed. "Grandma, please, can't we just work this out?" "I tried to work it out," I said. "For 10 years, I tried to be part of this family, and they pushed me aside like I was garbage. So no, Winnie, we can't work this out. Not unless they're willing to admit what they did and make real changes." "They'll never do that," Winnie whispered. "I know," I said sadly, "and that's why this has to happen." That weekend, the local newspaper ran a story about the lawsuit. The headline read, "Local business owners' children sue, claiming elder abuse." But the article didn't paint Florida and Burrell as heroes. Instead, it revealed all the evidence Homer had leaked to the press: the $3 million in bonuses, the property sales, the suspicious transactions. By Monday morning, everyone in town was talking about it. I went to the grocery store and people stared. Some with sympathy, some with judgment, some with curiosity. At the checkout counter, the cashier, a young woman named Zenobia, looked at me with kind eyes. "Mrs. Pierce, I just want you to know, my grandmother went through something similar with her kids. I think you're brave for fighting back." "Thank you," I said quietly. "Don't let them break you," Zenobia said. "You deserve to control your own life." Those words meant more to me than she could know. As I loaded groceries into my car, a man approached me. It was Judge, one of Burrell's friends. "Mrs. Pierce, can I talk to you?" he asked. "If you're here to defend my son, save your breath," I said. "I'm not," Judge said. "I'm here to apologize. I knew Burrell was taking advantage of you and I didn't say anything. That was wrong. I'm sorry." I looked at him, surprised. "Why didn't you say something?" "Because I didn't think it was my place," Judge admitted. "And because Burrell's my friend. But what he and Florida did, it's not right. And you shouldn't have to go through this alone." "Thank you," I said, feeling tears in my eyes. "That means a lot." Judge nodded and walked away. As I drove home, I realized something important. I wasn't alone, not anymore. People were starting to see the truth, and in 3 weeks, the whole world would see it in court. The family is falling apart. Alvaretta discovered her children stole millions, and now they're taking her to court. What's going to happen at the trial? Will Alvaretta win? And what other secrets are about to come out? Please subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell right now. Drop a comment below. Are you Team Alvaretta or Team Florida/Burrell? What do you think will happen in court? Where are you watching from? Drop your country or city below. The 3 weeks leading up to the trial were the longest of my life. Every day brought new drama. Florida and Burrell were doing everything they could to make me look bad. They told anyone who would listen that I was confused, that I'd been manipulated by my lawyer, that I was destroying the family over nothing. But I had Homer, and I had the truth. The trial was set for a Monday morning in late November. I woke up that day at 5 o'clock, too nervous to sleep. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, watching the sun rise through the window. At 7 o'clock, Homer picked me up. He'd insisted on driving me to the courthouse. "How are you feeling?" he asked as we drove. "Terrified," I admitted. "What if the judge believes them? What if—" "Stop," Homer said firmly. "Alvaretta, we have evidence, we have documentation, we have witness testimony. They have nothing but lies and accusations. You're going to win." "I hope you're right," I whispered. When we arrived at the courthouse, I saw news cameras and reporters gathered outside. My stomach dropped. "This is a public trial," Homer explained. "Your children made sure of that. They want everyone to see the poor victim they're trying to save from herself." "Then let them watch," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Let everyone see the truth." I was wearing my best outfit, a royal purple dress suit with amethyst jewelry. My silver hair was perfectly styled. I looked every bit the strong, capable woman I was. As I walked up the courthouse steps, reporters shouted questions at me. "Mrs. Pierce, is it true you're not mentally competent?" "Mrs. Pierce, why are you fighting your own children?" "Mrs. Pierce, do you think you're too old to run a business?" I ignored them all and walked inside with my head held high. The courtroom was packed. I saw my entire family sitting on one side: Florida, Burrell, Winnie, Arch, and several other relatives I barely recognized anymore. On my side of the courtroom sat Homer, my CFO Green, and a few loyal employees from the company. It was a much smaller group, but they were there for the right reasons. Judge Sterling Whitfield entered, and everyone stood. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes. I'd heard he was fair but strict. "Please be seated," Judge Whitfield said. We're here today regarding the case of Florida Pierce Morrison and Burrell Pierce versus Alvaretta Pierce. The plaintiffs are claiming that Mrs. Alvaretta Pierce is mentally incompetent and that legal documents were signed under duress or manipulation. Mrs. Pierce is defending her right to control her own estate. Is everyone ready to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, said Attorney Fate Henderson, Florida and Burrell's lawyer. He was a thin man with a sharp suit and a fake smile. Yes, Your Honor, Homer said. Then let's begin, Judge Whitfield said. Attorney Henderson, you may present your case. Attorney Fate stood up and walked to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, this case is about protecting a vulnerable elderly woman from exploitation, he began. Alvaretta Pierce is 78 years old. She's a widow who lost her husband 10 years ago and has struggled to manage a multi-million-dollar estate on her own. I bristled at that, but Homer squeezed my hand under the table. Stay calm, his eyes said. Mrs. Pierce's children, Florida and Burrell, stepped in to help, Fate continued. For 10 years, they've managed the family business, maintained properties, and ensured their mother's financial security. They did this out of love and duty. But recently, Mrs. Pierce was approached by a new attorney, Homer Banks, who convinced her that her own children were stealing from her. This attorney filled her head with paranoid delusions and convinced her to sign documents transferring all assets back to herself, cutting her children out completely. Objection, Homer stood up. Counsel is making statements without evidence. Sustained, Judge Whitfield said. Attorney Henderson, stick to facts, not speculation. Yes, Your Honor, Fate said smoothly. Let me rephrase. Mrs. Pierce signed documents giving herself sole control of all assets. These documents were prepared by attorney Banks without input from Mrs. Pierce's children or longtime family advisors. We believe Mrs. Pierce was not mentally capable of understanding what she was signing. He turned to look at me with fake concern on his face. Mrs. Pierce is elderly. She lives alone. She's isolated from her family. These are all risk factors for elder abuse and manipulation. We're asking this court to declare Mrs. Pierce mentally incompetent and appoint her children as conservators to protect her interests. I felt rage burning in my chest, but I kept my face calm. Your Honor, I'd like to call my first witness, Fate said. I call Florida Pierce Morrison to the stand. Florida stood up and walked to the witness stand. She was wearing a conservative black dress and minimal makeup, looking every bit the concerned daughter. After she was sworn in, Fate began questioning her. Ms. Morrison, can you describe your relationship with your mother? It's always been very close, Florida said, her voice trembling slightly. After my father died, my brother and I made it our mission to take care of Mom. We knew she was grieving and struggling. And how did you help her? We took over management of the business so she wouldn't have to stress about it, Florida said. We handled the finances, the properties, everything. We wanted her to enjoy her retirement in peace. Did your mother seem capable of managing these things herself? No, Florida said sadly. She would forget important meetings. She'd get confused about finances. There were times she couldn't remember conversations we just had. It was heartbreaking to watch her decline. I nearly jumped out of my seat. Those were lies, complete lies. Homer put his hand on my arm. Wait, his expression said. And what happened recently? Fate asked. A few months ago, Mom started acting strange, Florida said. She accused us of stealing from her. She said we were waiting for her to die. It was like she didn't even recognize us anymore. We were so worried. Florida's voice cracked, and tears started rolling down her cheeks. Then she suddenly showed up with this new lawyer and said she was taking control of everything. She locked us out of the business, out of the accounts, everything. Your Honor, my mother isn't well. She needs help, not people taking advantage of her confusion. Thank you, Fate said. Your witness, Attorney Banks. Homer stood up slowly and walked toward Florida. His face was calm, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. Ms. Morrison, you said your mother was confused and forgetful. Can you give specific examples with dates? Florida hesitated. Well, I don't remember specific dates, but there were many times. You don't remember specific dates, Homer interrupted. But you want this court to believe you have clear memories of your mother's mental decline. I'm not good with dates, Florida said defensively. I see, Homer said. Let's talk about something else then. You said you and your brother managed your mother's business out of concern for her well-being. Is that correct? Yes. And during this management, did you pay yourselves? Florida's face flushed slightly. We received reasonable compensation for our work. How much? Homer asked. I don't know the exact amount. Homer pulled out a document. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit A, financial records from Pierce Construction Company showing that, over the past 5 years, Ms. Morrison and her brother paid themselves $3 million in bonuses and consulting fees. Does this refresh your memory, Ms. Morrison? The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Whitfield banged his gavel. Order, he commanded. Florida's face was bright red now. Those were legitimate business expenses. $3 million, Homer asked. For managing a business that was already profitable. Ms. Morrison, your parents ran that same business for 40 years and never paid themselves even a quarter of that amount. Times are different now. You also sold 5 rental properties and kept the proceeds instead of reinvesting them or giving the money to your mother. Isn't that true? We had the authority to make those decisions. Authority that you gave yourselves by having your mother sign documents she thought were routine paperwork. Correct. That's not. Ms. Morrison, isn't it true that you and your brother systematically isolated your mother from her own business, took control of her assets, and enriched yourselves while waiting for her to die so you could inherit everything? No, Florida shouted. That's not what happened. Then explain the conversation at your mother's 75th birthday party, Homer said calmly. The one where you said, and I quote, I can't wait much longer. She's 75. How much longer can she possibly live? Florida's face went pale. You can't prove that. Actually, I can, Homer said. Your mother heard that conversation. She's prepared to testify about every word you said. Would you like me to continue, or would you like to admit that your concern isn't about your mother's mental health, it's about your access to her money? Florida's mouth opened and closed. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they looked like tears of panic, not sadness. No further questions, Homer said and returned to our table. I wanted to cheer, but I kept my expression neutral. Next, fate called Burrell to the stand. My son looked confident as he sat down, like he thought he could talk his way out of this. Mr. Pierce, can you tell the court about your mother's mental state? Fate asked. My mother used to be sharp as a tack, Burrell said. But over the past few years, she's changed. She forgets things. She gets paranoid. She accuses people of things that never happened. Can you give an example? Sure, Burrell said. Last year, she accused me of selling one of her properties without permission. But the truth is, she'd approved the sale herself and then forgot about it. When I showed her the signed paperwork, she claimed she'd never seen it before. Another lie. I never approved that sale. What do you think is causing this decline? Fate asked. Age, Burrell said sadly. And maybe early dementia. We've been trying to get her to see a specialist, but she refuses. Why do you think she refuses? Because she doesn't realize she has a problem, Burrell said. That's common with dementia patients. They don't understand they're declining. Homer stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Pierce, you said your mother has dementia. Have you had her evaluated by a doctor? She refuses to go, Burrell said. So you have no medical evidence of dementia? No, but it's obvious. Mr. Pierce, I'm going to submit Exhibit B, Homer said, holding up another document. This is a comprehensive mental health evaluation of your mother conducted by Dr. Shade Williams, a neurologist, just 2 weeks ago. According to this evaluation, your mother has no signs of dementia, no cognitive decline, and is fully capable of managing her own affairs. Burrell's confident expression faltered. In fact, Homer continued, Dr. Williams notes that your mother scored higher on cognitive tests than most people her age. She has excellent memory, strong reasoning skills, and no mental health issues whatsoever. How do you explain that? Those tests can be wrong, Burrell stammered. Can they? Homer pulled out more documents. Because we have evaluations from 2 other doctors saying the same thing. Are all 3 doctors wrong, Mr. Pierce? Or are you lying about your mother's mental state to justify taking control of her assets? I'm not lying, Burrell said angrily. Then let's talk about the $3 million you and your sister paid yourselves. Was that for your mother's benefit? We earned that money by managing her business, with her resources, while systematically excluding her from decisions about her own company. Isn't that right? We were protecting the business. From what? From the woman who built it. Mr. Pierce, isn't it true that you wanted your mother out of the way so you could run the company however you wanted and pay yourself whatever you wanted? No. Isn't it true that you've been waiting for your mother to die so you could inherit everything? That's ridiculous. Is it? Homer walked closer to the witness stand. Mr. Pierce, did you or did you not say at your mother's birthday party, she's 75. How much longer can she last? Burrell's face went red. That was taken out of context. Was it? What context makes that statement acceptable? Burrell had no answer. No further questions, Homer said. After lunch, it was my turn to testify. I was nervous as I walked to the witness stand, but I reminded myself that I was telling the truth. I had nothing to hide. Homer approached me with a gentle smile. Mrs. Pierce, can you tell the court about your mental health? I'm perfectly healthy, I said clearly. I have no dementia, no cognitive decline, no confusion. I remember everything that's happened over the past 10 years. Why did you decide to take back control of your estate? I took a deep breath. Because 3 years ago, I overheard my children talking at my birthday party. They were discussing how long I might live and how they wanted to divide up my money after I died. They laughed about it. They treated me like I was already gone. My voice cracked slightly, but I continued. That's when I realized they didn't love me anymore. They just loved what I could give them. They'd spent years pushing me aside, making me feel worthless and confused, all while taking control of everything I'd built with my husband. What did you do? I decided to take back my life, I said firmly. I hired attorney banks and we spent 3 years building a case. We documented every unauthorized transaction, every lie, every time they enriched themselves at my expense. And when we had everything we needed, I took it all back. Do you regret it? Homer asked. I looked across the courtroom at Florida and Burrell. They were staring at me with angry, desperate faces. I regret that it came to this, I said quietly. I regret that my children cared more about money than about me, but I don't regret taking back control of my own life. I'm 78 years old, and I'm not ready to die yet. And I'm certainly not going to spend my remaining years being treated like I'm already in the grave. Thank you, Mrs. Pierce, Homer said. Now it was fate's turn to cross-examine me. Mrs. Pierce, isn't it true that you're angry at your children? He asked. Yes, I admitted. And isn't it possible that your anger is clouding your judgment, that you're making rash decisions out of spite? No, I said. This isn't spite, this is self-preservation. But you're cutting your children out of their inheritance. They're not cut out, I interrupted. They just don't get to control everything while I'm still alive. When I die, they'll inherit according to my will. But until then, it's MY money, MY business, MY decision. Mrs. Pierce, do you really think you can run a multi-million-dollar company at your age? I smiled. Attorney Henderson, I ran this company for 40 years before I ever let my children help. Age doesn't make me incompetent. It makes me experienced. Fate tried a few more questions, but I answered each one calmly and clearly. Finally, he gave up. No further questions, he muttered. After both sides finished presenting evidence and testimony, Judge Whitfield called for a short recess before making his decision. I sat in the hallway with Homer, my hands shaking. You did great, Homer assured me. You were clear, confident, and honest. The judge will see that. What if he doesn't? I whispered. He will, Homer said firmly. 30 minutes later, we were called back into the courtroom. Judge Whitfield looked down at us from his bench, his expression serious. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, he began. I've listened to testimony from both sides, and I've examined the medical evaluations of Mrs. Pierce. My heart pounded. Based on everything I've seen, I find no evidence that Mrs. Pierce is mentally incompetent, Judge Whitfield said. The medical evaluations clearly show she's of sound mind. Her testimony was clear and coherent. And frankly, the financial records suggest that she has more reason to question her children's judgment than they have to question hers. Florida gasped. Burrell's face went pale. The petition to declare Mrs. Pierce mentally incompetent is DENIED, Judge Whitfield continued. Mrs. Pierce has every right to control her own assets. The documents she signed transferring control back to herself are valid and will stand. Furthermore, the judge added, his voice stern, I'm troubled by what I've heard today about financial irregularities at Pierce Construction Company. I'm recommending that the Attorney General's office investigate possible financial elder abuse. Your Honor, please, Fate started to protest. That's my ruling, Judge Whitfield said firmly. Court is adjourned. He banged his gavel. I sat there stunned. I'd won. I'd actually won. Homer hugged me. Congratulations, Alvaretta, you did it. I looked across the courtroom. Florida was crying. Burrell was arguing with Fate. Winnie and Arch looked shell-shocked. But I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, just emptiness. I'd won the battle, but I'd lost my family. As Homer and I left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Mrs. Pierce, how do you feel about the verdict? Mrs. Pierce, what will you do now? Mrs. Pierce, do you plan to reconcile with your children? I stopped on the courthouse steps and turned to face the cameras. Homer started to pull me away, but I shook my head. I want to say something, I told him. Homer nodded and stepped back. I looked directly into the cameras, at all the people who'd been watching this story unfold. To anyone out there who thinks age makes you weak, you're wrong, I said clearly. I'm 78 years old, and I'm stronger now than I've ever been. I took back control of my life from people who thought I was too old and confused to fight back. But I want to say this too, I continued. I don't feel victorious. I feel sad, because the people who betrayed me were my own children. The people who should have loved me were the ones who hurt me the most. My voice cracked, but I kept going. If you have elderly parents or grandparents, please treat them with respect. Don't assume age equals weakness. Don't treat them like they're already gone. And for heaven's sake, don't sit around waiting for them to die so you can take what's theirs. I looked directly into the nearest camera. Because old doesn't mean weak, and we're not going anywhere. Alvaretta won the trial, but at what cost? She's lost her entire family. What happens next? Will there be reconciliation, or is this family broken forever? Subscribe now, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell. Drop a comment. How did you feel about the trial? Do you think Alvaretta's children will ever apologize? Where are you watching from? Let me know. The weeks after the trial were strange. I'd won in court, but I felt like I'd lost everything that mattered. I went back to running my company. Every morning, I'd wake up at 6, put on one of my violet suits, and drive to the office. The employees had started to respect me again. They saw that I knew what I was doing, that age hadn't made me weak or confused. But at night, I'd go home to my big, empty house. No Sunday dinners, no family gatherings, no phone calls from my children or grandchildren. Just silence. I told myself this was what I wanted. This was what I'd fought for: independence, control, respect. But late at night, lying in bed, I couldn't help but cry. Because even though my children had betrayed me, I still loved them, and I missed them terribly. 3 weeks after the trial, I got a call from Investigator Octavia Chen from the Attorney General's office. Mrs. Pierce, "We've completed our investigation into Pierce Construction Company," she said. "I need to meet with you to discuss our findings." My stomach tightened. "What did you find?" "It's better if we discuss this in person," Octavia said. "Can you come to our office tomorrow?" The next day, I sat in Octavia's office with Homer beside me. Octavia was a serious woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Mrs. Pierce, our investigation confirmed what you suspected," Octavia began. "Your children engaged in systematic financial exploitation. Over 10 years, they took approximately $8 million from you." "8 million," I gasped. I'd known about the $3 million from the past 5 years, but $8 million total. "Yes," Octavia said. "They used various methods, inflated bonuses, fake consulting fees, property sales where they kept the proceeds, unauthorized loans to themselves that were never repaid. It's one of the most egregious cases of financial elder abuse we've seen." I felt sick. $8 million. My children had stolen $8 million from me. "What happens now?" Homer asked. "We're prepared to file criminal charges," Octavia said. "Both Florida and Burrell could face up to 10 years in prison for elder abuse and fraud." "Prison," I whispered. "Yes, ma'am," Octavia said. "But Mrs. Pierce, the decision is partly yours. As the victim, you have the right to decide whether you want to pursue criminal charges or seek restitution through civil court." I sat there, stunned. I could send my own children to prison. "What's the difference?" I asked quietly. "Criminal charges mean they'd face jail time," Octavia explained. "Civil restitution means they'd have to pay back what they took, but they wouldn't go to prison. However, civil cases can take years, and there's no guarantee you'd recover all the money." "How long do I have to decide?" I asked. 2 weeks, Octavia said. "Think carefully, Mrs. Pierce. This is a big decision." That night, I sat on my porch, wrapped in a blanket, thinking about the impossible choice before me. Send my children to prison, or let them get away with what they'd done. Part of me wanted justice. They'd hurt me, stolen from me, treated me like I was worthless. They deserved consequences. But another part of me, the part that remembered Florida as a little girl, braiding my hair and calling me her hero, and Burrell as a young boy, telling me he wanted to be just like his mama when he grew up. That part couldn't bear the thought of them in prison. A car pulled into my driveway. I tensed, wondering who would visit at 8 o'clock at night. It was Winnie, my granddaughter. She got out of her car slowly and walked up to the porch. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "Grandma," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Sit down." Winnie sat in the chair next to me. For a long moment, we both just stared out at the dark street. "I'm sorry," Winnie finally said. "For everything, for not standing up for you, for being part of it." "You were part of it?" I asked. "Not the stealing," Winnie said quickly. "I never took any money, but I knew Mom and Uncle Burrell were treating you badly, and I didn't say anything. I was scared of going against them, and I was selfish. I kept thinking about what I'd inherit someday." She turned to look at me, tears streaming down her face. "But Grandma, I was wrong. So wrong. You're not just an inheritance. You're my grandmother. You taught me to read. You took care of me when I was sick. You came to every school play and graduation. And I forgot all of that because I got greedy." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I heard about the criminal investigation," Winnie said. "And I know you have to decide whether to press charges. Grandma, I'm not here to beg you not to. If you think Mom and Uncle Burrell should go to prison, that's your right. They hurt you. They deserve consequences." She wiped her tears. "But I wanted you to know that not everyone in this family has forgotten who you are. I love you, Grandma. Not your money. Not what you can give me. Just you. And I'm so sorry it took losing you for me to remember that." I felt tears rolling down my own cheeks. I reached over and took Winnie's hand. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means more than you know." We sat there together for a long time, holding hands in the darkness. 2 days later, Florida called me. It was the first time she'd contacted me since the trial. "Mother," she said, her voice hoarse, "we need to talk, please, just once." "I don't know if that's a good idea," I said. "Please," Florida begged. "Burl and we need to see you. We need to say some things, just give us an hour, that's all we're asking." Against my better judgment, I agreed. The next afternoon, Florida and Burl came to my house. This was the first time they'd been inside since the trial. They both looked terrible, tired, thin, worn down. We sat in my living room, the same room where we used to have Sunday dinners as a family. Now it felt like we were strangers. "Thank you for seeing us," Burl said quietly. I didn't respond, I just waited. Florida took a deep breath. "Mom, we know about the criminal investigation. We know you have to decide whether we go to prison or not." "We're not here to beg," Burl added quickly. "If you think we deserve prison, we'll accept that. We just wanted to talk to you first." "About what?" I asked coldly. Florida looked at her hands. "About how we became the kind of people who could hurt you." She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "When Dad died, I was so scared," Florida said. "Not just sad, scared, because Dad always handled everything. The business, the money, the decisions. And suddenly he was gone and I didn't know what would happen to us." "You had me," I said. "I knew how to run the business. I'd done it with your father for 40 years. "I know," Florida said, "but I didn't see it that way. All I saw was that you were getting older and I was afraid. Afraid you'd die too. Afraid the business would fail. Afraid we'd lose everything." "So you decided to take it," I said. "At first, we told ourselves we were helping you," Burl said. "We convinced ourselves you were declining, that you needed us to take over. But the truth is, we wanted control. We wanted security. And the more we took, the easier it became to justify taking more." "We became monsters," Florida said, her voice breaking. "We forgot that you're our mother. We only saw dollar signs. And we told ourselves you were too old to notice or care." "But you noticed," Burl said. "And you cared, and you fought back, and you were right to do it." I sat there, listening to them confess. Part of me felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad. "Do you know what hurt the most?" I asked quietly. "It wasn't the money. It wasn't even being pushed out of the business. It was hearing you talk about waiting for me to die, like I was already gone, like my life didn't matter anymore just because I was old." "I'm sorry," Florida sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that we know what we did was wrong." "We destroyed our family," Burl added. "We destroyed your trust. We destroyed everything for money, and we can never take that back." "No," I agreed. "You can't." We sat in silence for a moment. "So what now?" Florida asked. "Are you sending us to prison?" I looked at my 2 children. The children I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. The children who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "I have until next week to decide." "Whatever you choose, we'll accept it," Burl said. "We deserve whatever consequences come." They stood to leave. At the door, Florida turned back. "Mom, I know I don't deserve to say this, but I love you. I always have. I just forgot to show it." "I love you too," Burl added. "Even if you can't love us back anymore, I need you to know that." They left, and I sat alone in my living room, crying. Because despite everything, I still loved them too, and that made this decision so much harder. I spent the next week agonizing over what to do. I talked to Homer, who said whatever I decided, he'd support me. I talked to Octavia the investigator, who said both options were valid. I even went to church, something I hadn't done since the trial, and spoke to Pastor Early Johnson. "Pastor, how do I choose between justice and mercy?" I asked. "That's one of the hardest questions we face," Pastor Early said gently. "Justice says they should face consequences for what they did. Mercy says forgiveness is more important than punishment." "But how do I know which one is right?" I asked. "What does your heart tell you?" he asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. My heart said I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of anger, tired of being at war with my own children. but my heart also said I deserved justice. I deserved to be heard, to be acknowledged, to have my pain validated. Finally, I made my decision. I called a family meeting at my house. Florida, Burl, Winnie, Arch, and even some extended family members came. Homer and Octavia were there too, as witnesses. Everyone sat in my living room, tense and silent, waiting for me to speak. I stood at the front of the room, looking at all their faces. "I've made my decision about the criminal charges," I said. "But before I tell you what it is, I need to say some things." Everyone leaned forward. "For 10 years, you treated me like I was invisible," I began. "You made me feel worthless, confused, and weak. You stole from me not just money, but dignity. You took away my sense of purpose and my control over my own life." Florida and Burl both looked down, shame on their faces. "What you did was wrong, it was cruel, and it was illegal," I continued. "You deserve consequences for that." "But," I said, my voice softening slightly, "I've thought a lot about what kind of consequences will actually fix anything. And I've realized that sending you to prison won't give me back what I lost. It won't restore our relationship. It won't heal this family. So here's what's going to happen," I said firmly. "I'm not filing criminal charges, but there are conditions." Everyone looked up in surprise. "First, you will pay back every penny you took, all $8 million, I said. "We'll set up a payment plan. It'll take years, maybe decades, but you will pay it back." Florida and Burl nodded quickly. "Second, you will publicly apologize," I continued. "I want a written apology published in the local newspaper, admitting what you did and taking full responsibility." "We'll do it," Burl said immediately. "Third, you will both attend therapy," I said. "Not just for a few sessions, real long-term therapy to understand why you did what you did and how to never do it again." "Yes," Florida agreed. "Fourth, you will step down from any leadership positions at Pierce Construction," I said. "You can work there as regular employees if you want, but you will never again have control over my assets or my business." They both nodded, though I could see it hurt. "And finally," I said, my voice becoming emotional, "you will rebuild my trust, not with words but with actions. You will show me consistently over time that you love me for who I am, not for what I can give you." "We will," Florida said, tears streaming down her face. "I promise, Mom, we will." "It won't be easy," I warned. "Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. You destroyed 48 years of trust. Getting it back won't happen overnight." "We understand," Burl said. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving us a chance we don't deserve." It's been 6 months since that family meeting. 6 months since I decided to choose mercy with conditions over pure justice. And I can honestly say it was the right choice. Florida and Burl have been making their monthly payments religiously. They published their apology in the newspaper, a full-page ad where they admitted everything and apologized not just to me, but to everyone who trusted them. They're both in therapy. Florida told me recently that her therapist is helping her understand how fear and greed corrupted her values. Burl said therapy has been painful but necessary. They're working at the company as project managers, good positions, but not leadership. And you know what? They're actually good at their jobs when they're not trying to steal from me. We're not back to the way things were. We may never be, but we're building something new. We started having Sunday dinners again. Just small ones at first, me, Florida, Burl, Winnie, and Arch. The conversations are sometimes awkward, but they're real. No more pretending, no more lies. Last Sunday, Florida brought me flowers, lavender my favorite. She handed them to me and said, "These are just because I love you, not because I want anything. Just because you're my mom and you deserve flowers." I cried, real happy tears. Winnie visits me twice a week now. We have coffee and talk about her life, her dreams, her struggles. She's applying to graduate school and asked me to write her a recommendation letter. I was honored. Even Arch has come around. He apologized for his angry words during the trial and asked if we could start over. He's been helping me learn how to use social media, something this 78-year-old never thought she'd do. Pierce Construction is doing better than ever. I've hired new leadership, people I trust who aren't family. I've modernized our practices and invested in new technology. And I'm loving every minute of it. People told me I was too old to run a business. They said I should retire, relax, let younger people take over. But I've proven them all wrong. Last month, we landed the biggest contract in company history, a $20 million project to build a new community center. When I announced it at the company meeting, everyone cheered. Shade, my operations manager, pulled me aside afterward. "Mrs. Pierce, I have to say, when you first came back, I had doubts, but you've proven that age is just a number. You're the best leader this company has ever had." That meant the world to me. But the most important thing I've done in these past 6 months is start a foundation. It's called the Alvaretta Pierce Foundation for Elder Justice, and its mission is to help elderly people who are being financially abused by their own families. We provide free legal services, financial counseling, and support groups. We educate families about elder abuse and how to prevent it, and we advocate for stronger laws to protect vulnerable seniors. I've put $2 million of my own money into the foundation, and we're already helping dozens of people who were in situations like mine. Last week, I met a woman named Dovie who was 75 years old. Her children had taken control of her bank accounts and were refusing to give her access to her own money. She was living on $50 a week while they spent thousands on themselves. With our foundation's help, she got a lawyer, took back control of her finances, and is now living independently again. When she hugged me and said, "Thank you for fighting so I didn't have to feel alone," I knew this foundation was my true legacy. Not the money, not the business, but helping others find their strength. Today is my 79th birthday. I'm sitting on my porch, watching the sunset, and thinking about everything that's happened. A year ago, I was at war with my family. I was hurt, angry, and determined to make them pay for what they'd done. Today, I'm at peace, not because everything is perfect. It's not. My relationship with my children is still healing. There are still hard days and difficult conversations. But I'm at peace because I took control of my own life. I proved that old doesn't mean weak. I showed that you're never too late to stand up for yourself. I demonstrated that age brings wisdom, not weakness. A car pulls up in my driveway. It's Florida, Burl, Winnie, and Arch. They're here for my birthday dinner, a small celebration, just family. Florida is carrying a cake. Burl has a gift wrapped in purple paper, my favorite color. Winnie and Arch are laughing about something. They walk up to the porch, and Florida smiles at me, a real, genuine smile. "Happy birthday, Mom," she says. "We love you." "I love you too," I say. And I mean it. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal and the pain and the long road to healing, they're still my children, and I'm still their mother. But now they see me, really see me, not as a weak old woman waiting to die, not as a bank account with a heartbeat, but as Alvaretta Pierce, business owner, foundation founder, fighter, survivor. As we go inside for dinner, I think about everything I've learned. I learned that family can hurt you worse than strangers ever could. I learned that money changes people in terrible ways. I learned that age is not a weakness, it's a superpower. I learned that you're never too old to take control of your life. And most importantly, I learned that the people who think old means weak are in for a big surprise. Because this old woman took back her entire estate, saved her company, started a foundation, and rebuilt her family. And I did it all at 78 years old. My family thought old meant weak. They screamed when I took control of the entire estate. But now they know the truth. Old doesn't mean weak. Old means wise, strong, powerful, unstoppable. And I'm living proof. Wow, what an incredible journey. Alvaretta didn't just take back her estate. She rebuilt her family, started a foundation, and proved that age is power, not weakness. This story shows us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. It's never too late to take control, and you're never too old to be strong. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories. Smash that like button. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment below and tell me, what was your favorite part of Alvaretta's story? Do you think she made the right choice not to send her children to prison? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, Kenya, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, India, the Philippines. Wherever you are, let me know. I want to see my global family. Remember, age is not a weakness. It's a testament to your strength, your survival, and your wisdom. Never let anyone make you feel less than because of your age. Thank you so much for following Alvaretta's powerful journey. Until the next story, stay strong, stay blessed, and remember, you are never too old to take control of your life.